We're good? You want me to do the intro? Take it away. All right. Hey, folks, I'm going to stand just because I want to honor you. It's not that the chair is falling off the edge. It's all good. We have an incredible panel. And I don't think this is the last panel between drinks and anything, is it? No, good. But I want to read to you. I have 4 pages on each person's bio. So we have John, who is an incredible man. I'll tell you 4 pages on his bio in a second. Nadav and Sean. Guys, do you want to do the shorter bio or should I do the 4 pages? All right. We'll start with Sean. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Gary. Sean Cunningham. I'm with ForgePoint Capital Partners, and we're a venture capital firm based in Silicon Valley. And we invest only in cybersecurity, and we are a $300 million fund. We were founded about 3 years ago, and that's kind of all we know. My background is I was with Intel Capital prior to joining ForgePoint for 15 years. Started doing security investments back in 2000, and joined ForgePoint 3 years ago. And we have 3 other partners: Don Dixon, Alberto Yopez, and most recently, we just added Minnesota as a partner from Comcast to give us some smarts in the group. And we're focusing pretty much on earlier stage, Series A, Series B companies. We also have a few growth equity companies in our portfolio. And just so you wonder, I like to get attention is really why I'm wearing this. I had a bicycling accident, so it's really not that serious. So it was self-induced. But
we were wrestling earlier today. He won. That's why I have to stand. My back is killing. So you were at Intel Capital?
I was.
For how long?
15 years.
How'd you like it?
It's a great platform. I had done, did about 20 deals at Intel Capital. We invested globally. The group did, deals mostly in Europe and quite a number in Israel. We had 3 full-time investment people in Israel, and a couple of them were focused on cybersecurity. So it's a great platform.
Very cool. Now, Nadav is going to tell us something different, which is very interesting. It's not really a venture group that you're in. Tell us what it is, where you're located, what you do.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Nadav from Team 8. We started about 4 years ago. We're different in the sense that we don't have a deal flow. So we start our own companies. We go around the world. We talk to smart people, try to identify big problems. If we think the problem is interesting enough, we have our own research group and think tank that puts their minds around that. And if we think we have an intelligent idea of how to really crack through that problem, we put together a team and with the support of our strategic investors, build a company around it. And it's a process that we do once a year. So every 12 to 18 months, we start a new company. The companies revolve around big problems in cyber and data-driven challenges. They're non-competitive, so once we start them, there's also collaboration that happens between the companies. So that's sort of the differentiated model.
Okay, I get a sense, because we're going international, you might be from another country originally?
You could tell by my accent, I knew that.
I'm just guessing. Now, I heard we're on our way to John. John and I are going to do the big money thing together, right?
Right.
Yeah. Right. Does everyone see his picture up there?
Looks identical.
Yeah, we mixed everything. There he is. Okay. So the most patents in the world. Can anyone in the room guess what country has the most patents in the world? There's a prize. Nope. You're close. Anyone?
China, they stole them all.
We're getting closer. China. Okay, it's not China. It's not Israel. Who has the most patents in the world? The USA. Be proud, people. Okay, we're going international, though. Number 2 is?
Number 2 is Israel.
And number 3 is Japan. Isn't this interesting? So on that note, let's talk about Canada.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Rafuse. I'm the agent for the world's most famous hacker and top cybersecurity keynote speaker, Kevin Mitnick. If you don't know who Kevin Mitnick is, cybersecurity basically started with Kevin. His case changed a lot of things, a lot of laws. He never stole for money, but his electronic joyride, he broke into dozens and dozens of companies, took over or was able to access most of the telecommunications systems of the US and elsewhere. His case was followed worldwide. There was a Free Kevin movement. He's the subject of countless books and TV. If you were here last year, of course, you saw him speak in Hack Live. He was the opening keynote speaker. And I work with him to work, why they asked me to be on this panel is I work with almost all the major cybersecurity companies, startups and otherwise, the big players, that leverage Kevin to put in lead funnels. He does endorsements before people invest in companies. They ask Kevin to do security claims validation, which is very important, which people are missing. He does security penetration tests of banks and things of that nature. So instead of going to prison now, he gets paid to hack. He still loves hacking. It's his first love. Yeah. And he loves showing off, and now he gets to go on stage and do that. And that's what he does. So what I do is I help you, help me, help you create money and revenue, because everybody has some great technology in the room. And I speak to people all the time, countries, security companies, entrepreneurs. They have great technology, but a lot of them don't have good sales. So we work at doing global marketing for these companies using Kevin as a brand, because he's the anti-hero. And in this age of mistrust, ironically, they trust Kevin. And I'm very pleased to see the list come out today, because KnowBe4, who has Kevin's endorsement, and their flagship product is the Kevin Mitnick Security Awareness Training product, is number 2. Yay for being number 2. And that's great. So he's in 17,000 organizations. He's in 170 countries worldwide. And I'm here to help you. I'm also part of the board of advisors for the event itself. I'm pleased to see this is in the 3rd year. It keeps morphing. And there's something for everybody. And you have to make it your own, this kind of conference. And I hope you see you next year as well. I see a lot of familiar faces, and I see a lot of new ones. So hope to work with all of you.
So John, I want to say sorry to Canada. Sorry for not saying Canada has a lot of patents. But you have a gift for someone in this audience, which is one of the things I'm excited about. He's telling you about Kevin Mitnick. Does everyone here know who Kevin Mitnick is? Have you ever met Kevin Mitnick? Has he ever handed you his business card?
Who's got a business card?
Okay, so who doesn't have one and can't get into their hotel tonight? Okay, somebody is going to get one. And the business card happens to be lock-picking gear. I kid you not.
People line up for hours for these things, but I don't want to go too far into Kevin. I just want you to understand that he's a valuable commodity that you can leverage for your cybersecurity companies, your existing underperforming assets, and things that we can help you with. Okay.
And the reason I'm staying over here for another reason is there's something he was talking about, Bluetooth eavesdropping on my cell phone to get my contact list. So I put my cell phone in the right pocket, in lead. Kevin's not here. Right?
No.
Oh,
we already got that. That's good.
Okay, so I'm running Cyber Defense Magazine. It's in its 6th year. I really appreciate this opportunity to be here and to be with a great panel. I won't talk too much. I'll go quick, but we have 1.2 million readers. We have tons of content. It's free. It's one of the few things in this world that's free and in GDPR compliance. In other words, we didn't collect enough data on everybody. These guys would be like, we're not funding you. You're not monetizing all your readers by tracking every button they click. But we will one day, don't worry. But we'll do it legally. So internationally, GDPR is going to be a big issue. We heard earlier this morning that maybe not, the president's administration will do something about it. How do you guys feel? Let's just go through the panel from Sean. We'll work our way across. I want each panelist to give a different view on an answer to a question. Keep them short and entertaining if we can. Would you invest in a company that just showed up today and says, I solved the GDPR problem? I've got it.
Of course. Anybody says they solve it, of course. So my take on GDPR, there's going to be really 2 segments of folks that benefit: attorneys and consultants. And the reason why is right now companies are trying to figure out, May 25th is coming up, how do I solve it, i.e. how do I stay away from getting fined? And so they're really trying to understand, the gaps and where I can put the checks in the box. And for a startup to come in and be a platform it's pretty unlikely they're going to be able to be a platform and solve a GDPR issue. A point solution, maybe, but everyone is so busy right now. Point solutions around GDPR are going to be very difficult to get attention. So my take is right now, there's going to be so much FUD by the big guys like, we solve your problem, don't worry. That I would not fund, personally, I would not fund a GDPR company at this point. I can't say that ForgePoint Capital won't fund one. We're doing some arm wrestling, but right now I think we all agree that the attorneys and the pro services folks are going to really make the money for the next period of time.
That's a good answer. And Nadav, what do you think about this whole GDPR privacy and this nightmare, which, I think VCs love to fund problems, right? We want to solve a big problem. Is this a big problem that you would invest in a solution for?
Privacy generally, yes. I think that in many ways, we look for the bureaucrats of the world to solve some of the problems that we're dealing with. And I don't think it'll come as a great surprise that in most cases, they aggravate the problem. And so as technologists, we really shouldn't blame them because we're not solving it either. And the dilemmas that CISOs and CIOs and boards and bureaucrats and legislators are getting right now, a part of them have to do with a very simple phenomena. We blew up the chart on interconnectivity. Everything became interconnectivity. Data became the number one monetized resource on the planet. Everything is interconnected. And in one generation, we changed the whole concept of privacy. When I was growing up, everything was private, and you would choose what you wanted to publicize. That has flipped around. And everybody's trying to get their minds around it. The attackers are using the fact that the hyperconnectivity curve is out of the charts to become more and more effective in their attacks. As defense, we're still reactive. We're still, finding our ways, trying to get better, and there's a gap that's opening. The GDPR is coming after that gap. So is Zuckerberg is being questioned, right? So
do you think that lowered his valuation significantly? The fact that Facebook is leaking out millions of records accidentally?
Actually, I don't think this is accidentally. I think this is another story. But I think that our biggest problem is that we are really we're still reactive. We're waiting for the lawyers and the bureaucrats to solve it for us. We need to come up with the next generation of solutions that will enable the potential of interconnectivity and data mining to surge and solve a lot of the world's biggest problems without giving up privacy altogether. And I think in the academia, in other places, there are pockets of capabilities that we're looking at right now that can bring fundamental changes.
But Nadav, don't you think just fundamentally everyone needs to agree on what privacy is? If it's going to be solved in that manner, I mean, that's solving world hunger.
Well, not really. I'll give you an example, right? So I agree that we need to understand what privacy is, and that's a society decision and cultural decision and psychological decision. But fundamentally, I think if you take the concept of encryption, for example, right? A lot of companies do encryption, but encryption it only captures data in two states, right? Either it's moving or you're not using it. We need to find ways to change that reality. Take it to the next step. Well, what if we could use information while it's encrypted and solve some of the biggest problems in privacy? So I think what I would like to see coming out of this room, what I push my research groups to do, is come up with solutions that will make GDPR irrelevant.
Taking notes? This is good. You guys taking notes? I'm going to write a story about this. Speaking of which, John, remember Visa PCI? Everyone said, I'm PCI compliant. You can trust me. I promise, your credit card data won't be stolen. People like Kevin Mitnick are like, boom, the database is unencrypted. It happened at the Gap. The SEC got mad at them. Do you think it's all hype right now, or is this
compliance testing is very limited? It's a very low bar. First off, I believe privacy is a human right. I think that's, if we start from that standpoint, we can be a better society. But that might be Canadian coming out of me. For people that have already invested in service companies, I think you're going to see tremendous growth in that area. Specifically, it's shining such a great light on incident response, which hasn't got that big of focus by most of the companies. You know, security companies, we live in kind of a bubble, right? But, you know, most companies don't know that they should be doing security penetration testing. They know they should be doing compliance testing to get their visas and MasterCards and do the billing, but they don't know they should be actually doing wargaming and how easy it is to go bypass it. And this is an education idea where we need to get that messaging out there. And as an industry, we're not doing that. Or even the government sector is getting that in.
Okay, so Qualys, Foundstone, McAfee, right? Which I think DeWalt, no, Intel McAfee, yeah, that was a DeWalt company. All these auditing engines came out to find, you know, there was a whole area called vulnerability management. It was big and hot for a period. And now today, I don't hear as much about it, but I'm hearing things like, we need to audit the cloud. We need, Dave DeWalt talked about SaaS apps, right? How many apps do you have? So my next question is really, is this the hottest area to invest in right now, is to go back to the drawing board of saying, we don't even know how we're connected in the cloud. We have so many apps we're running. I'm let's say the CIO of a big public company or even a medium-sized company, and we offload the risk to these third-party, you know, SaaS providers. Is this a hot area that you guys would want to invest in today? You know, dig in, figure out what apps are running, how are they connected? It's really, I'm getting back to privacy. It's where's all this data being stored? And if we don't know, then that's why we keep losing it. Sean, what do you think?
Clearly, you know, talk to the CISOs and they'll tell you, you know, the problem is not solved. I mean, moving to the cloud, we're still not there. You know, we're moving the crown jewels to the cloud. And it's all about authentication, identity management, and, you know, being able to automate that process and not make it so painful. And we actually are looking at a couple of, matter of fact, we're going to fund a company in Canada, of all places, that's doing SaaS identity management, more for the SMB type market, to be able to help them, you know, migrate to the cloud. But I think at the end of the day, Gary, you're right. It's about the data and it's about how you protect that and, you know, the applications. We invested in a company called Previty, which does RASP, which is runtime application self-protection. And again, it's all about automating. You heard that theme, and you continue to hear that theme. It's the VC lemmings love that term. But it's really about, you know, being able to automate that and make it easy for the DevOps and the SecOps guys to be able to have that application protected. So when you're outward facing, you know, on a cloud application, that you don't have to worry about whether that's hacked or not, and whether there's any vulnerabilities. That's taken care of because this real runtime application self-protection is actually solving that problem. So there's a lot of different ways to approach it, but at the end of the day, we need to solve that. But it's like any of these opportunities, it's not going to be solved with just one solution.
Before you answer, Nadav, Israel has something I think they call the Iron Dome, right? I'm finding all these new Israeli startups like Dome9 and Como and others, or no, Coro, that are saying we can help you secure the cloud. And usually Israel, like I said, number 2 on pads, is pretty hot on these investments. You said you do one company a year that you guys will build and spin out. Will you do a company this year on the cloud? Can you tell us what company you chose to do and why?
We don't know yet, but, you know, on the cloud, we don't know yet. We're in a research phase, trying to see if, as Sean said, we can really revolutionize identity management so that the software takes care of itself rather than the infrastructure taking care of the software. So think about the infrastructure as a given, and the software has an identity of its own that allows it to work within guardrails and only talk to other software that knows that they're authenticated and can talk to each other. So that's something that we're looking at, but it's still in a nascent stage. What I think one of the things that Sean said about GDPR, going back to that, is that there's a fundamental. In a previous life, I headed an organization that's called 8200, which is the Israeli version of the NSA. And what we learned very, very fast is that you win big when you understand something which is fundamentally different, and then it becomes a contest. It becomes a learning contest, and you know, we have the attackers and the hackers and the cybercrime and the nation states that are not going to give up. This is not a problem that's going to go away. And digital life is not going to go away either. Right. And so the question is, in that constant battle between attack and defense, every once in a while, can you send offense, now that I'm on the defense side, every once in a while, can you send offense to reinvent itself, right? And that's why I think, and that's one problem. The other problem is we are creating, as investors and company builders, is that we're building so many companies that the CISOs and the CIOs, just to try to go through all these companies and understand what the hell they're saying in the first place is becoming a problem of itself. And the regulators are lagging behind. So what we must look for are fundamental changes that solve big problems and send the attackers to reinvent themselves. By the way, they will, but it's going to take them a long time. So I think the winners are going to be the ones that really understand fundamentals of cyber attack. Fundamentals of how do attackers think, how do they operate, and how can I send them to reinvent themselves? And that's why I brought the idea of homomorphic encryption. If we could take homomorphic encryption, which basically means that we could have our data encrypted and still use it, then privacy becomes a totally different question.
That's a game changer.
That's a game changer. Is it going to cost a lot? Can we make it very practical? It's going to take a lot of effort. But if we can do that and have data encrypted not only when it's moving or when it's at rest, but when we're actually using it, then we can start doing the balancing act between privacy and other rights. Because I agree that privacy is a natural sort of right that we have as humans, but we also have other rights, and we want to balance them.
So before John answers, and I've got something I want to share in a minute that's really interesting about what these gentlemen are talking about, is I spoke to an amazing Canadian fellow who's been on Dancing with the Stars. Do you know who I'm talking about? Does anyone in the audience know who I'm talking about? He runs one of the largest MSSPs in the world. Anybody? Robert Herjavec. And I said to Robert, and I want to get your opinion on this, Robert, this is because we're talking about international investing. I said, hey, Robert, if there was a startup, the hottest startup in the world, I mean, you saw the technology, it looks amazing, it's the next scene past Splunk or ArcSight or Alien Vault or whatever, or it's the next IDS, IPS, like DB Networks who renamed to DB Cybertech, they're the next big thing. Would you deploy it for your clients? John, what do you think he said? It begins with SHOW.
Show me the money.
That's what he said. He said, show me the money. He said, if they're not already big, I'm not going to risk my MSSP reputation on a startup. So how do we get that next big startup funded if Robert's a little gun shy, or is that the right thing to be? Gun shy is a big MSSP.
How do you get the next big startup funded? Well, you need to show that it works. And most people don't have their stuff tested. One of the dirty secrets, and I'm not going to name names, we get approached by a lot of people to do endorsements. And they just want to give the money to Kevin and say, Kevin, just say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And all he's got is his cred. That's all hackers have, cred, right? And so he says, no, you need to get it penetrated. You test it. These are big companies that you see on the stock market. And they don't want to pay for the testing. They're using the Microsoft model. Let's release it out into the wild and let the users tell us what's wrong with it, right? And there's nothing wrong with Microsoft. It works for that operating system. People go with it and they solve it fairly quickly. So to get the next thing funded, you need to have actual people that you can trust testing it. And that is the problem that Roger has, is the trust of these products to fund them, I think. I've never talked to the man.
Okay.
He lives in a different part of the country. It's a big country.
It's LA.
It's LA. I was just going to say.
Right.
He's in, Toronto and LA.
Yeah.
Not Vancouver.
Yeah, he was operational with the East Coast. Anyways, I just.
I'll challenge you on what Robert told you, because I think if he sees a technology that is young, immature, has been tested, and is truly revolutionary, he'll use it and he'll sell it, and he does. He uses one of our technologies, one of the companies that we built. It's a young company. It's 2.5 years old.
But wait, this is like, no offense to my president, I only started with $1 million. Is this a young company that started with 50 million to 100 million in funding?
No, started with $5 million.
Just 5 million?
5 million.
Okay, keep that hand up. You telling the truth? The whole truth?
Okay. Only the truth.
All right, keep going. I like it.
$5 million. That's our model is very simple. We put $5 million in after we've done the 12 months of research, ideation, validation. We put $5 million at a pre-money valuation that's a set deal, $5 million. So the founders and management get 50%. We own 50%, and together we go and build the company. So $5 million.
Do you find the founders, or do you guys? So we come up with our idea. We're in our think tank, and we go find the right research people.
So in this case, we were out. The problem that we articulated is the SNR, the signal to noise ratio problem in SOCs. And we said we understand attackers. We're going to find a better way to find attackers and detect them with relatively very low false positive. We went out, we researched it for 6 months. We brought in attackers. We got EIRs to work with us on that. And then at the end, after 12 months, we put the $5 million and we started rolling out. To your point, we also had design partners that were very large companies. In this case, Citigroup, that was our design partner.
So pause on that for a sec. Did you guys hear that? Because my goal is to squeeze the info out of them for you. You have a startup, you funded an A round, 5 million, and you found a big trusted name to help design the solution. Mm-hmm. This sounds smart.
Design it.
Shouldn't we all be doing this?
Test the hell out of it. And then we went to Robert and we said, this is the best thing, the second best thing since sliced bread.
But he's talked to Robert.
Yeah.
But
I'm calling Robert. No, I believe you.
You've got the Israeli NSA derivative testing it, so you have a good testing bed there.
Get a good test bed.
It's not like the average startup that you would see out in the hallway, right? Where they're looking for funding, but you have no idea if you're going to invest 20 million into it or 10 million or whatever round you're looking at. You don't know what you're investing in. Like we had a device, somebody was going to invest 100 million into it. They said, this is the device that they're wanting to do it. The investor came to Kevin and said, Kevin, please test its security claims. It's secure. He found that they had the credentials on a hidden directory on the drive. It was, and I can't go into too much details, but it was complete fraud. And these people were very close to cutting the check. They were going to cut the check, and then these people were going to figure out the solution. Okay,
so due diligence 101. Sounds like we're adding to due diligence a little bit deeper technical analysis. Wow. And one of the questions I have, and this maybe we'll use this for the prize, is if I may.
Sure.
I got to get back into my hotel room. It's the Ritz-Carlton. Kidding. Someone's going to win this prize. Does anyone know how many records have been breached in America and Canada? TK Maxx, winners, whatever. How many records have been breached since 2005? I'm going to go fast, like the HQ game on your phones. Somebody. Raise your hand. Throw a number out. Go ahead. 2 billion? Okay. Going once, going twice. How many? A little bit higher. Keep going. Who said 5? You're not there yet.
10 billion.
10 billion, and you win. You get the prize. It's 10 billion. Go to privacy rights. Come up later. Get this, okay? All right. What's your name, sir?
Sammy.
And can I borrow your credit card just for? No. So, private is a joke, right? I'm not kidding. I got to get home tonight. Privacyrights.org, privacyrights.org. We're looking at 10 billion records breached, and I'm not picking on names of companies like Yahoo and poor Verizon, I think, who acquired them, but 10 billion. Did I do billion or million?
It's okay.
Show me the money. I'm sorry. Billion, million. Remember
Gary,
that?
the really interesting thing about the 10 billion number is, came up in an earlier panel, is, so how many of those were actually reported? I mean, to me, as privacy and as a consumer, as well as a investor, that's really important. And again, nothing against attorneys, but there are laws, the SEC, and there are a lot of laws out there that talk about reporting. There was just a law that was put in place for healthcare. Ransomware was considered a breach, you had to report it. Well, that lasted about 6 months before there was some hand waving, and now unless it does certain things, it doesn't have to be reported. So that to me is the biggest problem with these breaches, is they're not being reported. And the problem is that it's all about show me the money, because there are companies out there, ID experts and so on, who will give you breach remediation, who take care of the credit monitoring and the reporting and the self-protection. So that's really important that, we as investors, that make sure that, those are, we raise our hands and make sure those are reported. That's a huge issue.
Huge issue. So every state in America has some breach disclosure act. The problem is, right, within 30 days you must disclose you've been breached, and DFS in New York, DFS 500 or whatever, NCY, whatever it's called here in the Big Apple, you must disclose if you're in the finance industry. And Nadav said something called SOX, which is not Sarbanes-Oxley, but Secure Operations Center, but we have our analogies. Sarbanes-Oxley, Section 404, the financials got mangled or stolen. HIPAA, high tech, we have all these regulations, and yet is there teeth in them or not? And so that's, my question is, do we look internationally? This is an international conversation. So do you guys want to invest outside of the US where there's going to be more teeth like GDPR? Do you want to invest in startups or mid-market companies in the EU? Let me give you an example. G-Data. Has anyone heard of G-Data? German company. One of the oldest antivirus companies in the world. Nobody here has ever heard of them. They get like a 90% score on Virus Bulletin, but nobody here's heard of them, right? Would you guys, maybe G-Data's doing a round to go public on the, maybe the London Exchange. Would you want to make an investment if they do a great job? Where would you invest outside of the US and why? Let's just go to each panelist on that.
Yeah, I won't talk about Israel. We'll let Nadav, but our model is we invest around the world, and then we actually do exactly the Israeli companies do, is we bring the management team and or the sales marketing back to the US where really the spending is, but we leave the development teams. We have a company, Reversing Labs. We've got 60 or 80 engineers in Zagreb, Croatia. Alien Vault was founded in Spain, 4IQ in Spain. So we have them, around the world, but we move the headquarters back. We're huge fans. We actually are huge fans of Canada. We've had 6, I think, investments in Canada over the years, and 4 really nice exits. So we're a strong believer. It's about the innovation, the technology, and the cost of doing business is excellent around the world. Although we're located in Silicon Valley, just our portfolio, the ForgePoint Capital portfolio is a dozen companies. Less than half of those are actually located in Silicon Valley. On the East Coast, we've got a couple, as I say, in Europe and so on. So we believe that we go where the technology is. It was interesting, just one last note, my personal largest exit was for a company in, of all places, Chicago, Illinois, a company called Certify, which was bought by American Express. How many investments, people look at Chicago as a Boston, Austin, and so on. So we're not kind of wrapped around the axle on companies that are from the 4 different major geos.
Nadav, other than Tel Aviv, but we know great number of patents, and we're going to have a conversation on patents before we end this panel, if we have time. Where else would you look to invest? What other countries do you think are interesting?
We go after the talent. Whatever place we believe we can have some kind of advantage of getting the top talents to work with us, that's where we'll go. That's why we started out in Tel Aviv. We just have an unfair advantage.
Would you invest in Russia or China today after what we've heard from the White House on maybe we want these phones, maybe we don't, Kaspersky's out, Kaspersky's in, Kaspersky's out?
I think that's a very easy answer. The answer is no.
No China, no Russia.
In cyber, no, we wouldn't invest, and we wouldn't take money probably because of obvious reasons. And still, the market for the buyers are 50% in the U.S. And the rest probably Europe and Japan anyways, and so the answer is no.
Okay, John, before you tell us about Canada, which I love, no, I'm kidding. So I was recently in China, and I was the only American speaker at a Chinese threat intel conference, and they have a lot of innovation going on in China right now. One of them, called ThreatBook, you guys heard of Threatbook? Anyone? They have a U.S. office. They actually have a research lab in the U.S. in Seattle. The CEO goes, I don't want to do business in America because of how things are. I have more business in mainland China than I'll ever have. And he's happy to stay in his location. We can't even convince him to come this way. But he's willing to sell or license his threat intel. The cool part, I know we've heard too much about threat intel, but the cool part about threat intel is it's not malware. I mean, if the threat intel is bad, right? If someone sent you bad intel, you'd have a DDoS and they'd be out of business. But I'm wondering, would you invest in threat intel out of countries that aren't China and Russia, or are you not interested in threat intel?
That's definitely not at our stage. As a startup, you need to choose your battles. The last battle that I want to fight right now is to get into the crossfire between superpowers. We've seen other startups getting there. It becomes ugly very fast. Our credibility is going to be by selling to the blue chip Fortune 500 companies in the US. And I think in today's cybersecurity environment, regardless of other countries, you can build a great company that doesn't sell only in the US, but I think it's going to be almost impossible to build a great cyber company that really has an impact that hasn't done it in the US. It's just the way things are.
Thank you. And John, what are your feelings?
I concur with most of what he said. Essentially, though, for an investor, make sure that when you invest in a company outside of the U.S., that they are ready and prepared and willing to move their corporate vehicle to the U.S. because you'll be able to attract more money, you have better exit strategies, and there's a better acceptance amongst the corporate culture and networking as well. Specifically, like I get to see a lot of something you might want to take a look at is we do a lot of events for countries where they have growth innovation funds and things of that nature, where they're pouring money into cybersecurity companies. And you can take a look at some of these things and do P3 partnerships in your investing so that maybe you can minimize some of your risk when you're going after some of these investments because the countries are behind it. They're called subsidies, of course. And you might take a look at that kind of thing. I would also suggest that if you were really to play more of a safe factor globally, that you would look at the Commonwealth countries. I know that sounds kind of waspy, but it really is a way that you should look towards that kind of safety but globalization kind of feel. Now, that being said, the APEC, the Pacific Rim countries are great. Philippines has a very good population. Their infrastructure is not the greatest as far as internet stability, but it's very cheap and easy to produce products there and content factories to support your products. So,
would you believe that I've outsourced my receptionist to Canada? That's correct.
My mom appreciates that.
Yes. They speak English in Canada. I found that out, by the way. It's pretty cool. It's more of the Queen's English. The rates are a third of Ruby Red, whatever. I think they call themselves Newfies. Nicest people in the world. People say I have the best receptionist in the world. Canadian. There you go. So we've talked about Israel. We've talked about Canada. We've talked about China and Russia off limits, right? We've talked about Spain. Where else have you invested? Did you say the Ukraine or somewhere?
Croatia.
Croatia. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. We're down to maybe 3 minutes. So if I could do a rapid fire round, 2 more questions, and then if we have maybe 1 or 2 in the audience, and we do have a winner, don't forget your lock picking gear. I'm not responsible. Okay. If it works, it works. Ritz-Carlton, top floor. Let me know. Okay. So Sean, you and I had a chat earlier about patents, and I heard this morning, don't waste your time on patents by, I think, Dave DeWalt. Just move on. Just real quick, let's just go around the panel. Patents, yes, no, maybe, why not?
I could never disagree with DeWalt.
Okay.
I actually concur 100% with Dave that, patents are interesting, but it's not, I have companies that have patent attorneys, lined up and they're writing patents and so on, but it's good to have them, but it's not a high priority. I agree with Dave. Much rather spend the money on go-to-market.
That's good to hear. You know how much it costs once you have your patent is issued, but don't you want the PCT? You want the PCT with Israel, you want the PCT with England, you want the PCT with, by the time you're done on patent fees, the company's bankrupt.
Well, just at the end of the day, it's all about, okay, then you have to defend them. And that's the biggest cost. Way back in 2002 when I invested in Zone Labs. We had some really interesting patents. Another company, we ended up suing that company, and we won. We got some measly license fees back, and I don't think when Checkpoint bought us, they really cared about
They
the
didn't
patents
really
at the
care.
end of the day.
Nadav?
Depends what the outcome, what the technology is, and what outcome you want. And I'm not going to say anything about Dave because he's on my board, and he's the chairman of a board where he's also my boss because he's the chairman of Clarity and I'm the vice chairman.
Do you know why he's called the apex predator? Can you tell us all?
I can tell you.
You can't tell
I
us?
can tell you about patents.
encrypted.
I think it's really about where you want to go. If you want to build a company that will go IPO and become a sustainable growth company, and you have a real differentiated R&D team that is doing something which is defendable in the first place, I would say by all means, as soon as possible, go and do it. Because when you become a big company and you have deep pockets, somebody will go after you and use them for defense, not for offense. Use them for defense. In those scenarios, now if you're doing a Me Too, something that's already been done, you're just trying to do a better mousetrap, and you want to get sold as soon as possible to Checkpoint or Symantec, then by all means go to market and show that that you can actually do it. So I think it really depends, and a lot of these patents are really in software are so easy to circumvent that they don't make sense. But if you're doing something which is fundamental, then yes.
John?
Over 100 million people use the software and systems I've produced before I was an agent. I've designed systems. And patents are a check mark, but they're not a driving force in where you want to invest. You need to work from the cash register on back. Earlier panels, you would hear people, how many people get revenue? How many get to that stage? It's just like an ordinary business. If you are not able to show a path to create revenue right away, do not invest in that unless it's a dream or a passion or you want to just throw money on the racetrack, and that's fair enough, not a problem. But focus on the cash register on back. There's sales and there's delivery. There's lots of delivery, there's not very good sales. And that's the growth part of our industry. So invest in that side of things.
Three brilliant men with common sense. Are there any questions for them before we wrap up this awesome panel? Anybody? All questions are good. This is your one shot. Anybody? Come on. There's got to be one or two questions. We're going to wait it out until someone raises their hand.
Good time for 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Anybody out there working on the TLS 1.3 breaking of the man in the middle method for looking at decrypted payloads?
Let me try to repeat what he said.
Sorry.
No, I can repeat it. TLS 1.3. So TLS is the Transport Layer Security Protocol, which is kind of the future of SSL. Is anyone working on breaking it, doing man in the middle, like the old whale SSL VPN from Israel?
Currently, people doing the decryption to be able to inspect payloads. That method's going to break the TLS 1.3.
You won't be able to inspect payload. Well, hold on. The Israelis know how to inspect everything. Nadav, you can answer this.
Yeah, what are you doing?
What are you doing, man? TLS 1.4, you've been tested in the lab.
No, we're not. So the answer is not at this stage.
He blinked 3 times. Did you notice that? Okay, next question. That was a great question, by the way, and very technical. I liked it. Any question? We're going international. Anybody here from another country? I'm not going to name countries. Is there anyone here from Saudi Arabia who has a question? I see you in the back. Come on.
What's that magazine?
What's that magazine? Give us one question before the panel ends. He's saying we've covered everything. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to moderate. This is my first time moderating, folks, by the way, honestly. Thank you all so much. Great panel.
Thank you. Great to meet you.
We got to do the bump, right?